All right, you're on.
All right, welcome to House Education. We're just spending a little bit of time planning for next week and doing some agenda planning. So everybody knows we will vote out, if everybody feels comfortable doing that, we'll vote out our first bill next week, which is H 802, which is the inflator on the block grant that Representative Long flagged. I wanted to get it out quick because it's got to go to two other committees. Does anybody feel like they need to have any other testimony on this?
Sorry, which one are we doing?
It's 802. It's the one it's the one that says that the census block grant.
Oh, it's your.
Yeah, it's a very short, easy bill. I've had it confirmed by numerous people that this appears to have been an oversight. Anything you want to add?
No, I mean, it was as simple as what I said here.
Yeah.
This is not a complicated thing. It's just the exact same inflator.
Yeah.
You know, I was there, it's not.
It'll be our,
I guess I would add one thing. We did ask for like, what is the financial impact? I know that'll go to other committees. But it might make a difference to folks here. I don't know.
so in a very general sense, what I heard was a few $1 million. But what I would say is, what I will say is that the inflator has been there all this time, so it is
Right.
always.
It's not an increase. It's always.
Did we get formal information back on that or just a conversation?
Just in conversation, something I learned is that it is the money committees that ask for fiscal notes. And JFO knows that they will be asking for that. I just want to get it in the process. Give us a little something fun to do. Okay. The other issue that we need to final touch on, although we can go into miscellaneous ed bill, but just to think about, is we had a debate about, we had information about class size minimums and the conflict between the statute, when guidance will be there and when rules will be there. And do we just provide something that just says, this is sort of held in abeyance until the rules are finalized by the State Board of Education? So if anybody wants some more testimony on that, or if you just want to get a question answered, please do that. And I'd just like to sort of say, okay, check, we're all set to put that in the miscellaneous ed bill without further debate. PCBs are on the agenda this week, this afternoon. Well, that's going to be taking my bill, taking the state's response, finding where everybody's comfortable, putting final bill together, amending the bill to have it be something that we're all comfortable with. In the world of the miscellaneous ed bill, we've got the moratorium and this one particular issue. We can do nothing. Senate will probably end up doing something. We could do something that's we don't have to lift the moratorium, but we could say, notwithstanding the moratorium, if a nonprofit therapeutic school is buying another therapeutic school and will maintain its nonprofit status, that we can do that. I'm not advocating for anything here. I'm just saying we want to touch it, we can touch it. If we don't have to.
If we did touch it, if we did deal with that, is there a way to say, and not only buys it, but maintains its original mission so that they can't just buy the name and then repurpose the school?
Yes. Really get it. And I missed some of the testimony when
Maybe we don't need to take action for that to be able to happen between these two.
May not need to opinions.
Yeah,
Okay.
the state board has said, no, it's a new school.
Okay.
we did hear testimony that there's, and no, I'm not quoting, but that there's a need for more therapy in schools.
Yes, on that one, I think. Like, are you talking about a bigger change to the moratorium?
Yes.
I'm talking about a bigger change to the
I
moratorium.
think that's a far bigger issue, like,
Yes,
it's
sure,
the issue
For that one.
on our list, I think it's,
Right.
that would require quite a bit
So we
more.
would take care of the smaller issue first and then discuss that, because I think it's a huge topic that needs
It
to be
is.
discussed at some point. And it's causing some certain things to happen in public schools
Yeah.
that maybe public schools aren't ready for. And so there's all sorts of implications behind it.
Josh?
Especially like after hearing from Essex Westford, like how they have done everything as they should by the law and how great it is, but even they need more of this, right? That to me is telling that we could get all public schools to do that well, and we still need likely more of those facilities. So yeah, I agree with Chris that if we do just do the short-term stopgap, that we should definitely take that up as a conversation to move forward sooner than later.
Probably later, as we've got a lot of, that's a big issue, but later as in after crossover. But still with the ability to take action.
So thank you. What you just said is important. It is a big issue, and I don't think, I think it could have unintended consequences. But more importantly, I want to make sure that we're being very thoughtful about what we're doing in this area, because everything we're trying to do in special ed is going against what this is actually opening up for. And I just, my own local region isn't looking for, they're looking for trying to expand more programs within their buildings for students to get in front of their professional teachers. And we talk about this almost all the time. And it may be very premature to have conversations. All I'm saying. I recognize that there are some areas that might belong to it. I think it's potentially wide implications.
Yeah, my only concern, and I don't know enough about the issue at hand to offer any insight, but that there is, if we don't lift the moratorium for this one purchase, we will lose a therapeutic school.
But I'm not talking, I'm talking about the bigger
Right,
conversation.
no, I understand that, yeah. Yes.
Is it time for a different topic? Do you think we could get a little more testimony around the 80-20 bill for school counselors?
I would like to see us get some consensus on what we've got in front of us. I guess this is more of a talk among yourselves. My feeling is that this is an issue that should be solved within the contract negotiations. And that if school counselors are not well served by their representation in those negotiations, I'm not sure coming to the legislature is the best place to solve it. But that's just me, and that's my feeling on that one. But we've only taken one bit of testimony, so I think we could take some more. I would say, when you get a chance, chat with your colleagues and see where we might be able to move forward on that. Okay. Would everybody agree that we may want to get some more testimony from the special educators? They talked a bit about guardrails and whatnot for CSAs in the future. Is that something that we need more help with if we're going to make it part of what we're doing?
Say more about guardrails.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So the special educators have said, we see the value of CSAs. However, we feel it's important that they have guardrails. And they're talking somewhat technically about like who becomes the LEA.
Legal
all that.
responsibility. Yeah.
Possibly, but we might be able to get quite a bit of that answered by a shorter session with Beth.
Okay.
My feeling of what actually exists in our BOCES legislation. I don't think we're talking about any transfer of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
legal
yeah.
responsibility.
So before we make it a whole big thing, I kind of think we should just go to the lawyer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
side there.
Or we could ask the existing BOCES how they're handling those, if those
Right.
issues have come up, how they're handling them.
Yeah, you know, Josh, of course, it's so new, I'm sure. He
Right.
hasn't. Uh, okay. Anything else? We have a, you know, we got, yeah, all right, here we go.
Oh, can I still make one more suggestion?
Yes.
Someone suggested to me at lunch, in regards to Act 73, that we hear from Mara Teakin. Do you know who that is? She is an a professor of education at Bates College in Lewiston, Maine. And she's done extensive research on racial and educational quality of rural schools and rural communities, and how, rate both, racial and kids of minority races and kids from small towns do better in smaller schools. And so she would be a good person just to speak to that side of it.
So I would just caution us that would get us into a debate about the education in a small rural school, and we're not talking about changing that.
Does seem like we're talking about changing that.
And that's governance and funding.
Ongoing conversation.
I have a thought on that, if that's.
Yes.
So I think that as the task force was doing its work over the last couple of months, I believe that expert has other things to offer about just the picture of rural public education. I don't know. I've been a bit curious about her expertise as well, but it's food for thought.
Okay, I mean, if we will have gaps on our schedule, probably. I would like somebody to refine what they would like to ask of this person, to make
Yes.
sure it's apropos of
Yes.
Act 73 and what we're dealing with. Yes.
And just based, since it's about agenda, I see on tomorrow's agenda, we do have the rural schools coming in to talk to us, and I just want to say thank you. Because I know I've asked for it a few times, and I appreciate to see it on there.
This isn't really an agenda item, but I just want to put this out. Well, maybe it is an agenda item, but I continue to want us to take action in whatever possible way we can to set ourselves up in some way to start funding school construction aid. And I'm, we are all in agreement that we want this program to continue and to grow and all of that. But we say that a lot, and we have taken zero steps. And I do, some of the preliminary numbers of dollars coming in right now on school budgets, but budgets coming in much lower than they would be. If that continues to hold, it may not, but if it continues to hold, there's been a lot of talk about buy down of property taxes. We may not need to do that. That means there's dollars there. And I just, I'd love to have us have this conversation around, are we willing to go right out on a limb and say, if we're going to do education transformation, and my head is going to constantly go to the one thing that I keep saying I can sell to everybody is regional middle and high schools and combined with CTV programming. I want people to have something to look forward to, and that means putting some dollars to it.
I think that forward.
Pat, didn't I already have you talk to Superintendent Association to maybe get some people to talk about exactly this?
Yeah. It's on.
Yeah, sorry. Way ahead of you.
Well, thank you for that. Usually.
Yeah, so we will have them come in. Oh, yeah, we got school counselors coming in as well.
It's Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning. Oh, yeah. Wednesday, 9 or 10.
Color coded schedule is lovely.
I'm used to the old school agenda. All right. So anyway, yeah, thank you. Reminder that's happening. Representative Brady.
I am increasingly meeting with people about a variety of things that are reminders of work we have started. It's a challenge we're in. Act 73 is huge and lots of things, but there's also other things happening and we can't sort of neglect everything. And a bit of a challenge we're running into of sort of keep saying we're putting everything up. whole. And so I long wanted to get a closer look at flexible pathways and Act 77, and obviously that, legislation that Chapin and Harper and I introduced as sort of a conversation point. I'm continuing to have a lot of conversations around outside the building around that, and I do think we need to take a close look. Regardless, a lot of these things are going to exist regardless of the future state, and so I don't think we can neglect it. So I do think we have to continue down understanding a bit what our intentions were, but where we are on flexible pathways, perhaps in general, but specifically in terms of the early college program. And I know that we're working on getting some testimony, but I just put in another plug that I think that needs to stay on our short list. And then knowing that our budget letter is coming due, I'm reminded of some investments that we have made and things that I think are incredibly important that we've kind of lost sight of as we've gone from the ESSER days to the scarcity days. Community schools, we came in at a great time represented. We did some pretty amazing work in this state, and this part is getting hard because stuff that was 3 or 4 years ago now, many people weren't here for. So there's some institutional knowledge even in our committee on these, but some of this is brand new to people. But the community schools work. When we started to have conversations 2 years ago about kind of changing schools and the needs in the state, there was a lot of conversation and interest and enthusiasm around the community schools model. And, now we're talking so much about comprehensive high schools. I think there's a lot of big ideas floating out around there about like what we want to see. But I worry we made a big investment. There's some great work happening in pockets of the state around that. There's some strong partnerships with the University of Vermont. It is grounded in national work that we've lost sight of it a bit. And so I wonder, in light of our budget priorities, if we want to take a look at sort of where the community schools work is standing right now in Vermont and what the needs might be to at least keep that going, if not to expand it. We're just so set up here to just like create new, and don't just spend the time on implementation and looking back on things. And that is none of our fault, but it is, I feel bad for the rest of the world outside the building, how much we operate in that way.
So
The next piece,
well,
yes.
just to say,
So I have talked to some folks that I think we probably need a bit of review because some people were not on the committee when we created the program and the original work around it. It led to work at the agency. Again, this is like we start a lot of things.
Yeah.
And, the agency has to see them through. We have to see them through. We have to check back on our investments. But so I can certainly, put Matt in touch with who to put together to give us kind of a little bit of a history. I think Senate Ed actually did some of this work last year and it never got to our agenda. And they were interested in it as well, but and where it stands right now.
Okay.
And what the needs are. Again, understanding we're in a very different budget scenario than we were 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when we started having this conversation.
well, I should say that is.
But I know the budget letter part is a particularly acute deadline. So
Yes.
that makes me nervous.
Well, and as you say, the budget reality right now is not lending itself to expanding programs. So this is going to sound like a pointed question, it's not meant to be, but like to what end are we? Because what we need to do, what we can do as a legislature in order to address community schools, for example, is fund it.
Yep. So I guess I want us to see where's all the funding right now? Where does it stand? What are the needs? And I'm not a budget expert that knows everybody else's requests out in the ecosystem here. I'm not ready to just say, oh, there's no money right now, so I wouldn't ask for that one because this is one I do know about and think has value. So I know.
Yeah, I mean,
That's- yeah.
the word from the appropriations committee is that there's about $3 million to play with.
Yeah.
For
Well, then
everything.
here comes my next one.
Well, I just want to, since this is agenda planning, shall we then get somebody in here sooner rather than later? Budget letters due Thursday. We're going to work on it Tuesday. We don't have anybody come into us to propose any funding. So why don't you talk with Matt, slip in at least a half an hour on this. to get started. Perhaps for Tuesday afternoon.
And then
Yep.
it's gonna be another one, but again, like the challenge of we create policy, we create programs, we invest in things, and then we sort of move on. And the teacher workforce, which I was reminded of it today in the testimony, we kept hearing, one of the goals right now of transformation is improved teacher quality. That's the most important thing in a kid's education. Salary alone does not just, make a teacher better. Teacher quality matters dramatically. And I went back to my notes from 3-4 years ago, and including, in addition to declining enrollment, we have the greatest number of decline of teachers of any state, and we have the most on, or had at least 3 years ago. Maybe it's changed on provisional and emergency licenses. You were looking at the McClure report. I mean, regardless of retirements and things, the workforce need in teaching and the interest in it is extraordinarily mismatched. That's happening nationally, but it's absolutely happening here in Vermont. We don't have a high quality teacher pipeline. There was a big workforce bill that this whole body passed that came through the Commerce Committee 3 years ago, 2 years ago, before this committee was, we were a different ed committee then. And there was an education piece of that. And that set up some really good work around emerging pathways. The world is changing. There isn't just one route to become a teacher. The same way we're doing emerging pathways with students, the same is true of working adults. To create some new opportunities and pathways for that, we had a teacher forgivable loan program that was extremely successful and ran out of money. And now we do have a bunch of people out there who we've left in the lurch. They have some of their money and it's out and they're not going to get the rest of it. Yep. So there's like that piece alone of kind of our, go, stop, go, stop. But I think the emerging pathways work and the kind of where we are, what the agency's doing. I know that we've had the division director, I'm not sure how it's all organized now, but Andrew Prouton's had such great data and information, is doing a lot of work trying to, there's some good collaboration with the Department of Labor, but a future state of education requires a really solid and well-trained teacher workforce. And we took a lot of testimony about it. We did a lot of work on it a couple of years ago. We made some investments and now we've kind of moved on. I know I picked this up at the open house and I'd really like to get more. I didn't have time to talk to Andrew that day about the emerging pathways. Like, I feel like we need to do our due diligence as the education committee and, understanding where things are, what the needs are, how these programs are working.
Well, the
And
forgivable
I
loan
perceive-
program has stopped.
Right, so that one is a pure money thing, but I also, some of this, you mentioned that there might be some like shifting of AOE positions related to Medicaid, and so if positions are moving around, or the AOE's potentially losing positions or vacancy savings, like, are there other needs in the agency that we are going to sort of lose overall capacity or numbers at AOE when maybe they're not, I don't know nothing about Medicaid billing, but maybe they're not needed for Medicaid billing, but we're also really need to be doing more for the teacher pipeline work. And so it's sort of budget, it's kind of like AOE reorg, and it,
So are
again,
you,
teacher workforce, I think has got to be on our radar. And
would your goal
yeah,
in the short term, would like to get an update from the AOE as to what is going on in terms of just pathways? And because I think
yes,
that, the
yeah.
forgivable loan program is pretty simple.
Right.
Ran out of money. There's no money. But which is the case for a number of forgivable loan programs.
Right. But yeah, I think that the pathways and the some of the, along with the secretary's testimony around teacher quality and raising teacher pay is this side of the teacher pipeline and teacher workforce. Who's coming in? What are the pathways to credentials? How fast are people turning over? And what are we doing to try to attract and retain high quality teachers?
But
Yeah.
it's not actually about what you're saying, but it keeps making me, because I pulled up this page and it makes me think on this. As we are shifting in all of those areas, I keep being asked what's going on with the graduation requirements.
Well, then that,
And proficiency-based learning, which is what made me think of this when you were talking about teacher proficiency-based learning, and where does that fit into the new graduation requirements? So while it's not about teacher it is somewhat related, and I'm just wondering if we could get an update on that, because there seems to be quite a bit of concern out in the field, and I don't mean necessarily, I've had a number of people reach out to me and say, what's happening with proficiency-based learning? It's not even mentioned in the new graduation requirements, and I can't tell you if that's true. I haven't seen. I don't know if anyone's seen them, but I know they're being worked on.
We should probably all read the, the report that AOE has now sent to the state board, because it will now go through state board processes. And then I think, great, we have a more regular cadence with the state board. This will be something, a regular cadence of updates on for sure.
That would be great.
So let's remember that we do have this regular setup
Yeah.
with the state board, that's a topic to talk to them about, and I'll hopefully remember to tell them that if they ask me about it.
I mean, we have made a lot of investments and commitments in that area, and if we're shifting, I want to know. Because it may have an impact.
May have an impact on early college flexible
It may.
pathways, and that's for capacity.
That's what made me think about it, why I pulled the page up when you were talking about early college flexible pathways.
So
Sorry, those aren't fun. and
I have no
it's a pain
bias
in the butt,
here,
and it's
one way or
just
the
more
other. I just want to make sure we have time to do our work that we.
I get it.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to put anybody off.
Right.
But like some of the stuff, we have no money. We're not gonna all of a sudden come up with $1 million, so maybe we can talk about it later. So, but I don't want to make it.
Proficiency based is not, that's something we already have in place, and this is not money. It's a correction, which may.
You got $1 million?
I loved how Fleur said small pockets. Get small pockets. To describe not having money, wasn't that lovely? I would love to see maybe after crossover, us talk, get some people in here to talk about the opt-out bill, 8:30. The point
It has to get here first, and there is
is he
a,
not here? That was here.
30?
8:30, right there. Yeah.
H830.
Yes.
Got it.
And,
Oh, it's already-
and I mean, it's just, it's kind of hand in hand with a cell phone.
I was opting out of something completely different.
No, I'm not opting out of all of
It's a-
this.
I need to know now.
I need to know more, yeah.
Anyway, yes.
Oh, you
Noted.
want the whole enchilada?
No, I just noted that we will.
Okay, great.
Crossover.
Can you please elaborate on what you were thinking? What he was talking about with opt-out?
Oh, well, there's this whole federal thing with being able to deduct from your taxes donations to independent programs, but you have to opt in or opt out. The state has to opt in or opt out of the program.
Oh, that's what you were thinking.
That's what I thought you were going.
That's what I was like, I need to know where he was coming from.
All right, well, thank you all for the input. It's actually quite helpful, especially on some of the stuff that we kind of got to deal with before crossover. And don't count on me to remember all of it. So
Sending sweats on.
a little notes here and there is fine. Yeah.
I can't remember a lot.
All right, well, shall we return to our usual discussion? Everybody ready?
Never.
Discussion.
Okay, yeah. So today, I thought I would give us a break from talking at each other and doing a little more listening before we start all talking at each other. So I've asked Legislative Council to take the recommendation that came from the Commission on the Future of Public Education and turn it into rough statutory language for us to just read and look at. Because I know that sort of the issue of school closure is one that is of concern to many people. And so just wanted to put it on the table as something. And then I have revised the sort of designation contracting language in light of some of the testimony that we've heard. And we can discuss that after as well. But Beth, if you're ready, we'll walk through the proposed school closure language. And again, I just want to reiterate, these are all for conversation. I did not want to lose the work that the commission did on this issue, so I wanted to make sure we had it in front of us.
St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm just signing into Zoom. What would you like to walk through first?
The school code language.
Okay, so as your chair mentioned, this is a very, very rough draft that I put together with no feedback or input other than the language in the commission's report. And even then, I had to make some choices for drafting purposes. So if what you see in the commission's report doesn't align exactly with this, too bad.
Before you start, just some context, this was one of the charges that the commission had, was to discuss community involvement in the decision to close a school. This was compromise language that the commission came up with. Not everybody agreed with every part of it. So off we go.
So this is meant to be more of a concept than really fine-tuned language, if you will. You can see right there on the second line, there's a policy choice there. So beginning in fiscal year, whatever you decide, the decision to repurpose a school building, close a school building, or cease using a school building to provide direct education in at least one grade, pre-K through 12, shall be made according to the following process. So this is, I should come back. I've drafted this as a piece of session law, meaning as session law, it would be envisioned to live for a short, finite amount of time. If this was something you wanted to put as a permanent process, like this is the only way to do it, we were going to add it to Title 16. So just keep these are all policy considerations for you to be thinking about. Okay, so the process. The school board shall form a steering committee to study the advisability of closing or repurposing the school building in question. The steering committee membership may include school board members, and the steering committee is a public body and is subject to the open meeting law. Ton of policy decisions right in that subdivision, right? What is the actual membership of the steering committee? It says may be school board members, but that may be an area where you want to provide some guidance. Number of steering committee members. The language that I used was directly from the commission's report. What does form mean? Are they appointing folks? Is there an application process? Like all of these things are policy decisions. Second step in this process, the school board shall include discussion of the advisability of closing or repurposing the school building in question on not fewer than 3 school board meeting agendas. The school board shall seek meaningful input from the residents who would be most affected by the potential closure or repurposing by holding not fewer than 1 school board meeting where school closure or repurposing is discussed in the town or city where the school is physically located and the town or towns or cities whose resident students attend the school. I think if you choose to move forward with this language, I can be far more eloquent here. The point I wanted to just like plainly get across is that the recommendation was that these meetings should be occurring not only where the school is located, but also where folks are sending towns, if you will. So if all of that is one town, great, then A and B are accomplished together. But if the school is located in one town and there are 3 towns surrounding it that send their resident students there, then there would have to be a meeting in each of those 4 towns. Again, that's all policy. That's all a policy choice. The third step would be the steering committee is making a recommendation to the school board regarding the advisability of closing or repurposing the school. Do you want me to continue with my commentary or just keep reading?
I think this commentary is very important.
Okay. Again, this is all policy. There is a place in here where I can actually say, no, you can't do that. But this is all policy. How is the steering committee arriving at this recommendation? Are you giving them any topics of consideration that they have to weigh? One of the pieces of law that I looked at yesterday when I was writing this was the school withdrawal process in Title 16, Chapter 11. It is there is a similar process where there needs to be a study committee formed to recommend to the communities whether to withdraw from a union school district. And that statute requires a whole host of specific pieces or specific topics, data points, what have you, that the study committee has to consider. So that might be something that you want to consider here is how is the steering committee arriving at their decision? You also could just say they can do whatever they want, right? There's a wide spectrum there of how specific you're going to get should you choose to take this up.
Which is a nice way of saying the Commission on Future Public Education, in coming up with this idea, basically created a steering committee, gave it nothing to do, and then said it had to produce a report.
I am not, none of this is a commentary on the hard work of the commission at all. It is a commentary on my lack of specificity in drafting. And where I would want to go if someone just said, let's try and flesh this out together. Page 2, here the commission recommended 2 different options. So I have them here as 4A and 4B. So 1, and they did not recommend this window within 60 days. I added that. So within 60 days after receipt of the steering committee's recommendation, the school board shall hold either a non-binding advisory vote or, in 4B, conduct a public input survey, both of which would be meant to reflect public sentiment regarding closure of the repurposing school. And the non-binding advisory vote or the public survey would have to go to the town where the school is physically located and all of the sending towns. Again, not only are there 2 policy choices here just for whether it's a survey or a non-binding advisory vote, whether it just goes to those localities, whether it goes to the entire union school district, like it's all policy in there. Whether you even have this advisory step before you get to any final decision is all policy. Okay, here we get to a little bit more of the finite where the law actually does provide you some guardrails. So within 90 days, again, I added that time frame because I think it helps to give folks windows of when these votes or decisions need to be held. Again, just because I find it helpful does not mean you need to make that policy choice. Within 90 days of the results of the non-binding advisory vote or public input survey, because we haven't made that decision yet, conducted pursuant to the language we just walked through, and not less than 180 days prior to the proposed date to close or repurpose the school. That was a recommendation in the commission. The voters of the entire school district shall vote whether to close or repurpose the applicable school. And then I added all of this fancy language borrowed right from Title 16 regarding that the vote would be taken by Australian ballot and it would proceed according to the election protocols we already have in place for union school districts, and that the ballots would be commingled. Commingling of the ballots is a policy question. It is technically a policy question whether or not you want the question determined by Australian ballot even, or whether it's a floor vote. But this is what most of what is happening in union school districts is happening this way. Do you want me to speak at all? And then I'll say on page 3, the 6th step is that closure or repurposing of the applicable school shall occur if the question is approved by a majority vote of the school district voters. So it's the entire district. Do you want me to speak at all to what I didn't include or not?
Yes, sure, that'll be fine.
Okay. There was a recommendation to have an appeal process to the State Board of Education. That's not really a thing for a vote. I don't really know how else to say it. Votes are, relatively speaking, a vote of the electorate is the way to determine the will of the voters. And there's not really an appeal process for a vote. There are various different ways you can contest an election or a vote, and most of those have to do with like procedural irregularities or ballot confusion. But just not liking the outcome or disagreeing with the outcome is not usually a basis. I believe that technically there is like an extremely extraordinary remedy available through common law, potentially if all of the facts are correct, for someone to challenge the results of a vote. All of that to say, if you make a policy decision to have the electorate be the final decision makers on whether or not to close a school, that's it. That's the decision.
President Wong.
Is there not a process in this scenario that a petition could be presented to consider a vote?
Yes, you could do that.
Because there is that.
There is reconsideration. There is
Yeah,
contesting a
and
vote.
So that's all spelled out in statute.
Yes, that's all in election law. But an appeals process for the results of a vote, I'm not aware of any analogous situation, and I think it flies in the face of public elections in general to allow for an appeals process to a vote.
You know, it just goes so far as to say, I mean, a reconsideration is in its own way some form of appeal. You know, if somebody's not happy with the vote, they can petition to reconsider it and they could change it.
Yes, that's very different than an
I
appeal
understand the language, the legal, but.
where there's a different decision-making body, right?
Got
It's the same, but when you
Got it.
file a, yeah, that's the big, that's what I see the difference as. When you appeal, you're appealing to an entirely different body to reconsider the issue, essentially.
Right.
When you file a petition for reconsideration, it's the same folks.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Whether or not the electorate is the final arbiter is a policy decision. If it is a school board that is making that decision, then I think we can certainly talk about an appeals process and what that looks like. And if you want to go any deeper into election law, please call on Tucker and Tim. And then we have the last provision in this language is just that this language is going to supersede any charter or school district articles of agreement to the contrary.
Can I ask a question, I guess, of you? Sure. On the appeals process, did that come from the?
Yes.
commission?
Yes.
The suggestion for potentially have, okay. that
We did
came
not
from
have, we did not have a lawyer in the room to advise us that we were going off the rails here a little bit.
But I just I wondered where it came
Yeah.
from, but that's important to know.
So, the components here are, you know, requiring a good, robust engagement and study by the school board or its steering committee. And then closure requires a vote. Now the vote is for the whole district, because the whole district's responsible for the expense of the building, as opposed to just the town in which the building is located. That also created problems because some, you know, what if you're trying to close a high school that serves 5 towns? Does just the town where it's located get to vote? So that's why it went district wide. It was also because if some of us believed that the decision should be made by the school board, and there were others who said it should be made just by the town. This was sort of the middle ground that we came through with. Leanne, were you going to
I
have
think you just answered my question. It was kind of going to be about how this was sort of a response to Representative Olson's bill. Worked for that district question.
It was a response to the charge that we were given to come up with a process for community engagement with our school. Yeah. Before that bill, I think it was over here. Yeah, so I only put this on the table, put it out there, just to have it in our back pocket if we want to continue discussing this. issue as we move to, if we can move to newer and larger districts. I know that some people have been very interested in this level of protection.
If the vote's no. the school say that.
I think having this other conversation, but I think there definitely needs to be conversation about some of the wording.
Yes.
If we move forward.
Some of the,
I see some concerns that I have already, but,
Did we hear them? Your concern?
one of the concerns is just the timeline and how, and not that it should be a quick timeline by any means, but I want to look further at the timeline. You got 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, and then you got a section even before that of a lot of different meetings that have to happen. So I want to look at the timeline more. And then, the big one is, should it be a vote? Right, that's the big discussion.
I also want to make sure everybody knows that there's language in the recommendation that's not here. This is only in the case of needing to close a school for, it's more of an arbitrary decision. I don't want to say arbitrary because it's well thought out, but it's not, if the roof falls and you got to close the school, you've got mold, that power already exists.
I'll just mention this because it's come up many times and sometimes it's by me, usually it's by me. In this process, and we're not in this language. When a community or a district is contemplating the closure of a school, one of the barriers is the challenge of what to do with that building if it's closed. So I'm going to continue to say that I think that we should be responsible in considering seed money for the district, the town, the whatever, and what happens to the building once it's closed. I don't know how any of that fits into here, but I just wanted to put it on everybody's radar because it's been a barrier in my own region, and I'm sure it's a barrier elsewhere to closure. I mean, even engineering costs, right, or legal fees can be a barrier. I didn't want to go there, but you did, so we'll go there.
Yes, thank you. And I'll just bring up some other concerns that I have. So for example, it says, if to repurpose a school building, close a school building, or cease using a school building to provide direct education in at least one grade. Does that mean that if you move your pre-K of 3 kids to another building, you have 9 pre-K kids? Does that mean you have to have an Australian ballot vote or just moving one district? That's where the vote concern is for me as well.
For clarification, if you move them to 9, if you move 9 kids to another building that was not, maybe within the school, but the school was adopting sort of another building, whether it's through rent or through, would that really be closing a school or would that be acquiring a space?
No, this says you hold a vote. This is based on the recommendation of the commission to repurpose a school, close a school building, or cease using a school building to provide direct education in at least one grade. So, we have lots of cases where people have moved 6th grade to a middle school. Now all of a sudden, under this proposal, you have to have a vote.
Oh, repurposing.
I'm not sure I read it that way, but if 2 people disagree, there's probably more people who disagree. So that's a great area to clean up to make sure it reflects your intent.
And I thought before I led this conversation, I should have gone back and read the recommendation because I thought we had dealt with this issue of moving just one grade.
I read this, and I'm not sure that I took this language directly from the commission. I may have borrowed it from the default articles of agreement under Act 46.
Yeah,
I read this to say you're ceasing to operate the school building with at least one grade in it. Not that you're moving one grade, but
Thank
we
you.
need to clean that up.
And maybe the repurposing is a little vague too, because does that just mean reconfiguring it for different grades or repurposing it for non-educational?
Yeah, we were not.
Good start.
We were not designing statute
Right.
at the commission level. Running broad recommendations for the legislature to consider.
I certainly appreciate that.
Further discussion on this? Anyway, so, just want everybody to sort of have it in the back of their mind if we want to take up this topic further in this session. All right, so the other language that Beth has brought is I had put on the table for discussion purposes sort of policy language about moving from sort of the town tuition program to moving to a direct contract relationship between school boards and independent schools. Again, this is sort of the idea that school boards are responsible for educating students in a school. And some of the testimony that we have heard is, for example, in the Champlain Islands, they send their kids to more than, the previous language said 3, but they use more than 3. We've got places along the New York state border that go all over the place. So I worked with Beth to make it sort of a little broader with no sort of number limit. And again, I put this out there as a good idea, but I may not have seen the challenges, and it may need a lot further revision. But why don't you go ahead and walk us through this as well? And I will say at the outset, so this concept basically says it recognizes that we have elementary school deserts in the state, and it recognizes that we have the historic academies that have long served as the public school in many parts of the state, but it does not recognize other schools as being part of the educational ecosystem. So it's right out there on the table.
Okay, just share my screen. Okay, we're still in Title 16. We're in the powers of school boards. Any language that's highlighted is different from the first draft you looked at. So the first draft you looked at required each school district or each school board to assign each student to a public school. And then if there was no public school reasonably available, then they would designate. This language requires each school board to establish policies and procedures for assigning each resident student to a school in grades kindergarten through 12 as applicable, that is either operated by the district or designated by the district pursuant to the designation section that we're going to walk through. Section 2 is the amendment to the designation section. So the first time you looked at this language in draft 1.1, there was the requirement, there was the limit of 3 schools, and it was either a public school or an approved independent school. This language says a school board may, on line 16, designate an eligible approved independent or public high school or schools to provide education for its resident students by contracting with an eligible school pursuant to this section. Subdivision 2 tells us what schools are eligible. So on page 2, a school is eligible for designation if it is a public school located in Vermont or outside of Vermont in a different state, or the school is approved under 16 BSA 166 of this title, which just means it is an approved independent school, is eligible to receive public tuition under section 828, and meets at least 3 of the following 4 criteria. The school serves as a regional CTE center. The school was established through the granting of a charter by the General Assembly. The school is qualified as a public school under the definition of public school in effect on June 30th, 1991. Or the school is designated under 16 BSA 1935 of this title as an employer of teachers within the meaning of Chapter 55 in Title 16. This is eligibility to participate in the state teachers retirement system. So those are the eligible schools. So public schools in Vermont or outside of Vermont in a different state, or an approved independent school that meets these criteria.
So for those who haven't seen this language before, I can see it raising questions. These are essentially legal definitions that encompass the 4 historic academies.
I thought that when we were talking about Act 73, when we passed Act 73, that there was language in it that said that these schools would still have to now meet the minimum class sizes, but that doesn't appear to be the case in this language. So would the schools still have to meet the minimum class sizes?
This language doesn't touch anything about eligibility to receive public tuition. As I said, when I walked through this draft the first time, all this language is meaning to do is get across the designation and contract concept. There would need to be so many conforming amendments around your policy choices and other places of Title 16 to make that work. Whether you want these schools, so yes, the class size minimum requirement is under Title 6, is
Okay.
under Section 828. But you haven't decided yet if you're gonna allow for public tuition anymore, and so do we need that statute anymore, and is that where they live, and do you want them, so whole host of other policy decisions, but technically under Section 828, that's where the class size minimum
Okay.
requirement lives.
Okay, so this cuts out all the other independent schools that have already been approved by the law last year. It's passed.
In grades 9 through 12.
In grades 9 through 12.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, by defining what a school is, as a public school or meeting these criteria, that limits the schools that are available to receive public tuition for grades 9 through 12 to the 4 academies.
For approved independent schools, public
Yeah.
schools, there's no qualifying language. And I am not familiar enough with those schools to know whether they offer elementary education. So if you all are, you can make those assumptions, but I don't know.
So it's not one of them.
For a concrete example, perhaps in my area, we have 2 approved independent high schools in my area that are currently receiving public tuition dollars, Burke Mountain Academy, East Burke School. Our high schools are independent. Under this proposal, they would not be eligible to be designated.
Correct.
Correct. An approved independent elementary school in my area that currently receives public tuition dollars would be Riverside. That still does meet under this because it's an elementary school, not a high school. If
I'm trying to remember, we talked about elementary schools, but did we not pursue language?
I don't think we talked, I don't have any memory of talking about.
TBD.
To be determined.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on page 2, line 15. A school district may operate its own public school or schools and also designate an eligible school or schools pursuant to this section. And there's no limit to the number of eligible schools the school board may designate pursuant to this section. And then
So again, that no limit, that is really to sort of recognize that we have places that use multiple public schools, probably greater than 3, some districts currently. Or they might use one of the 4 academies and 4 other public schools. All right,
that's it.
that's it.
Everything else remains the same.
There was some language at the bottom here that's in section 3.
Oh, I pulled that because of what we just walked through, but I'm happy to put that back up.
Yes.
You want me to put it back up?
Like,
Closure.
Yes, Matt, the draft I sent Matt initially had it, and then we walked through school closure language. I pulled it, but I'm happy to put it back up.
Put it back up there because this is a kind of a different issue, which I'm not sure if it's not. This was, so this next section was to address the issue of closing a public school that would then create a desert, a public school desert. And that would require state board approval. So then that becomes, it ties in with what we just talked about. So we'll need to figure out how to make that work.
So this is adding a section to the school board's chapter in Title 16, a school district that seeks to close a district-operated public school and instead designate an approved independent school pursuant to section 827, which is the designation statute that we just walked through. To educate the resident students that would be affected by the school closure shall seek approval from the state board for taking any such action. The state board shall approve a school board's decision to close a public school and educate its affected resident students by designating an approved independent school if the state board finds, after an opportunity for a hearing, that closing the school in question would not create a public school desert.
So here was my goal in coming up with some new language, which I said already, but I'll say it again, and that is we have heard concerns that school districts need more options for those that don't basically operate a high school. Have heard concerns that we don't want to necessarily make it a free-for-all either. And have heard concerns that we are shutting out schools that have served as basically public high schools for 200 years. So it's to be inclusive of that. It's to be inclusive of the need to have more than 3 schools available if you are designated. It's to address the concern that there are students who are equidistant from LI and St. J. Because they remain part of the system here. And just also sort of add some simplicity to it. So again, this is to discuss. Yeah, Representative Brown.
No, I was gonna say, I appreciate that this language sort of acknowledges a concern around public school deserts. So just glad, I think it's good that we're talking about that. And then obviously there'll probably be some policy decisions to make around defining what that looks like.
Question.
Yeah, but I think it's a really important conversation for all of us.
Yeah, and it may be one of those things where before a school board decides to close a school, they need to go to the State Board of Education, something like that. All right. Yes, please.
I just want to kind of call out that, restricting independent schools further could be a non-starter for many in the body.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of throw that out right at the beginning of the conversation with this.
And I think that Zoe's comments were, pretty apropos, she kind of ended with, just saying, well, we covered this, we passed Act 73. We had a lot of independent schools, now we don't have many, and thanks, but we'll oversee those. So, they're there for us to use.
Yeah, no, this is, I didn't certainly put this out there thinking that everybody was gonna give me a big hug after.
For what it's worth.
I just,
And, I would challenge everybody over the next few days on the weekend to
Yeah.
say, what are the unintended consequences here?
Right.
We should need to be asking about that of all things.
I like to say, I appreciate the effort and I definitely need some think time.
Yes.
Like the 3 out of the 4 criteria, I'd have to examine those more closely and see what those impacts would be on the independent schools in my region that aren't historic academies and what that might mean for elementary students as well as high school students.
Yeah,
So I appreciate it.
so my mind doesn't retain much, and in my mind, Beth and I totally solved the elementary school question.
I need think
I
time.
think I fantasized about that. But I do think, this does not speak to and does not recognize the fact that we do have public school deserts where at the elementary level, we have independent schools that have to fill the gap. And I think if I was thinking back, I was thinking like, yeah, perhaps no regulation on that or no, because it's really not that many. It's generally in one area. But anyway, that's to think about.
Thank you.
I just can't help myself. I feel like I have to say, I really disagree that we have in any way sort of put this issue to bed. I mean, I think the fact that we still have so many different policy threads that require some really thoughtful work, I really have to disagree with that statement from earlier.
I mean, this is at the heart of whether we can have, whether we can come to agreement on school districts and sort of a uniform thing across the state. This was my attempt to say, let's have school districts. Let's have school boards do across the state what they do in most of the state. That is, make sure kids have a place to go to school. Let's recognize that the historic academies have served that role and are vital to moving forward. But yes, it is, we are going to run into this every time we continue talking. Can we, are we really moving the needle if we just keep SUs? And is the real goal of SUs just to maintain choice in some parts of the state? Whereas I think the role of the state is to educate kids at a school. Yes.
This might be a topic for a later discussion, but it's very connected to this. So yes, there is that portion of continuing SUs because of choice. But is there a way within the format of everybody going to a district to leave things as is for the independent schools?
I would say this is the wall we keep getting hit by is by leave things in place. What does that mean?
What's currently operating right now after Act 73,
Well,
to not touch it any further.
what we didn't touch under Act 73, because it is continually the wall we hit, is the issue of choice existing alongside traditional K-12 education. That's the challenge.
We did kind of touch it in Act 73 because we passed something that limited it to 18 schools, I believe, which we were okay with because it passed.
We did not deal with it because we did not create districts. And new governments.
Right, so within a district model, is there a way to take care of it?
Right.
Where we can allow what is happening now to continue?
I think that that's what we keep running into, is that
So there,
I'm not sure we can.
So how do we move forward without doing any of what you're proposing?
These are all, I'm not sure I have an easy answer to that. I would say, there are other big thinkers out there thinking about this and discussing other things that I may never have thought of. But I mean, I've been in this committee for 10 years. And for 10 years, we can't move forward because we can't solve for having school choice exist alongside the way, K-12 education, it's the way it's generally delivered.
so can I just ask to clarify, what does solving that mean?
Well, changing it,
Eliminating it?
eliminating, yes, I hope I've been very upfront that this does eliminate the concept of choice. It does not eliminate the concept of paying tuition to independent schools to educate children. And I realize, this is what we're gonna, so I don't think we need to talk about this any further because I don't think we're gonna make any headway. But I would say that if there is somehow that it can all come together, great. I don't know what that is. I've been unable to find what that is. And I am, by virtue of the fact that I'm the one putting my name on things and putting these on the table, I am sort of following my own philosophy that we need larger, bigger districts, and these districts need to operate under a standard set of statutes. And that the second we start making special exceptions all over the place, it all sort of falls apart.
But I don't know.
But
Can expect some foundation formula that we're all.
I just have a hard time with the special exceptions. I mean, it's been part of the Vermont culture for longer than all of us have been alive multiple times.
I would agree that the use of the academies to educate children in high school has been here for generations. The proliferation of independent schools really happened post 1991. And that's when we sort of moved into a choice model with a lot of options. So my purpose is not to, this is my purpose to put this on the table. And for those of you who have an issue with this, to think about it, think about how we might solve for it. But this is our constant blockade. And it comes to the SUSD problem as well. So when I say I'm trying to solve for something, I'm trying to solve for my vision. Which I think that, that vision is shared by many others, including sort of the original proposal from the governor of H454.
All right.
Sensing silence and sensing the need for people to do a lot of thinking and not really being interested in fun. Shall we just adjourn until the floor and everybody can sort of talk among themselves? Or is there further discussion that folks would like to continue with?
As I talked to you earlier about, for me, I want to think through and digest before reacting.
Yes. Yeah. And I am not looking for a robust debate on this proposal right now. Because we should all sit with it for a while.
And I just want to clarify, for me, it's, we're all trying to have these courageous conversations and move the conversation forward. And when I put these ideas out there, it's to add to the conversation. Because these are things that I'm hearing and these are questions that I have. So
Yes.
it's not in any way to halt the conversation or to be dismissive of any of the ideas. It's strictly to, things need to be out.
No, and I fully expect you to sort of lead the conversation in different ways than I might lead it. And I appreciate you doing it. Yeah.
I don't know what my question is.
That's why.
Seems like a good time to grab an afternoon cup of coffee or a Diet Coke. Why don't we all take a break? And we have the floor at 3:30. If anybody sort of in the intervening time has some agenda suggestions or schedule issues, let me know.